Newman, just let us know when we are live. We are ready. Thanks. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning, evening from wherever you are joining this Potluck session, an innovation lab on sustainable gray and green infrastructure. My name is Jasdeep Randhawa, and I am the moderator for this session. I work as the Innovation and Climate Action Advisor at UN Habitat. And I just wanted to take you, first of all, through some housekeeping rules. In case you haven't joined yet, I would ask you to go and click on the Ask to Join button just under the description of this session. And once you click on the Ask to Join button, then you are able to both chat directly with the presenters and also ask your questions directly. And this would help in better engagement with our presenters and also more interaction amongst yourselves. And there is also, in addition, going to be an opportunity to engage in a Q&A session at the end of both the presentations that we are going to be presenting today. And at the same time, please feel free to drop in all your questions that you might have for the presenters in the chat. So please go ahead and just click on Ask to Join button. And that would be very helpful. The session is being recorded and it does consist of two presentations. The first presentation is going to be by Christian, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Research and Development Without Borders in Cameroon, on easy water technology. And the second presentation is going to be by Isabel, who's the acting CEO of Horizon NUA, on connecting the nature enterprise platform. The third request is, as you know, this conference seeks to take messages from these sessions into COP26 in Glasgow. And it also seeks to use these messages for the IPCC Special Report on Cities and Climate Change. And so I invite you to contribute to the knowledge space that has been set up on the website. And you will see in the chat box that we have shared the knowledge space link with you. There is a topical theme of the session, so sustainable gray and green infrastructure already there on the knowledge space. So please drop in all your ideas which emerge from this session, including any research, innovation, and implementation gaps that you hear during the presentation, and of course, from your own experience that currently exist. And please do make recommendations on how these research, implementation, innovation gaps could be addressed on the knowledge space. And this is also really going to help the writing teams in taking these messages further. So without further ado, I am going to be introducing the first presenter for the session. As I mentioned, Christian Frunangak. He is from Cameroon, and he is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Research and Development Without Borders. He is an environmental and WASH engineer dedicated to the cause of providing smart solutions to water and sanitation access for the poor. And the mission of the Research and Development Without Borders organization is to promote research and development in water, sanitation, health, nutrition, food security issues, so as to elevate poverty and empower youth for the social and economic development of urban and rural communities in Cameroon. And I am now going to hand over the space to Christian to make his presentation. Over to you, Christian.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jasdi, for this session. I will go straight away to share my screen. So let me get to my presentation. Okay. Is it all right? I think it's fine. Okay. As Jasmine said, the founder and the CEO of the organization Research and Development Without Borders found in Cameroon. And what I'll be presenting this afternoon is a technology or innovation that we started working on 1 year ago, known as Easy Water technology for water and sanitation resilience in Cameroon, specifically at the Dokayo community. I will not dwell too much on these again. Our organization is a non-profit organization. It was created in 2018 in Yaoundé, that's the capital of Cameroon. And as you clearly see, our vision is to live in a world where vulnerable communities can have full access to easy to use, affordable technologies for a more comprehensive and sustainable community development. One of our missions is to promote research and development in aspects of sanitation, health, food security, climate change, for the social and economic development of urban and rural communities in Cameroon and beyond. So what is Dokayo all about? Dokayo is a community in the eastern region of Cameroon. It's one of those areas that have been badly hit by the effects of climate change. It currently has a population of about 5,000 inhabitants, and due to these recent changes in climate, such as high heat and temperature changes that affected the water resources in Dokayo, the population itself has been suffering from access to water and as well as sanitation facilities. So when we started looking at that community, specifically because of high over rates of exploitation of the logging that's going on there, the felling of trees, we wanted specifically to look at how can we provide this community with something innovative, looking at the specific problems that have been caused by climate and man-made activities around there. It can also be said that in our country, in Cameroon, we have noticed that there's abnormal recurrence of high temperatures and heavy rains in other regions like the littoral region and the central region, where we've seen floods, we've seen property being destroyed and human life lost. So we are also really, really impacted by the effects of climate change. And so in that respect, we want to look at how we could bring a solution that could be close to the people, in terms of providing them basic infrastructure, at the same time looking at ways of mitigating climate change. So Dokayo was that kind of a case study for us, where we wanted to see how we could implement this technology of easy water and see what are the results we could get from there. As COVID-19 in 2020 hit us down the year in Cameroon as well, there's really pressure in terms of the existing water systems. For poor communities like Dokayo that don't have enough resources, the limited resources are already causing a lot of issues for the population. So with COVID-19 again, with the demands of hand washing in terms of standards for sanitation, it was really a problem. There's also the increase in water wastage due to late detections and repair of pipes and leakages and broken taps that are not being detected on time. And all of that, some of the issues that was affecting the population as well. And in terms of monitoring the water quality, for the population was really a big issue. And also, I think it's some of the things that are affecting other communities in Africa. So we noticed that about 90% of the hand pumps that are being installed just 1 year after are not operating in that locality. And also there's low sustainability in terms of following up in terms of the systems that have been put in place, like water, like the toilets, like the monitoring systems that have been put in place. Is really no sustainable systems of monitoring that could help the people to be able to know exactly what are the best approaches that they could use. There's also the lack of sustainable and reliable electricity. We're living in a community where the availability of grid energy is not that really common in terms of reaching out to all the communities. Some suburban areas really find it difficult really to have access to electricity. And there's this constant shortage, constant cutting of electricity as a problem. So we noted that as one of the issues in terms of systems that are using grid energy or systems that are using diesel energy to pump water. There was also the issue that we noticed of over extraction of groundwater, which really was because there are no systems that were put in place to understand how the aquifers are charging or discharging. And so it's really affecting about 2,500 persons in that locality. With COVID again in the corner, hand washing and sanitation experience really being a big problem for a vulnerable community like that. In order to look at the solution, we had to define certain objectives to guide us into putting our solution into place. And some of the objectives we capped up was like to improve the water and sanitation access, to groundwater monitoring, and renewable energy use. We also talked about how we could improve the accountability, maintenance, and resource management. The old system for community water systems like community like Dukayo, what they normally do was to use community, what you call community committees that manage water projects or water infrastructures. So those committees basically collect cash payments from the inhabitants, and whenever there's maintenance, they are in charge of doing that maintenance. But we realized that that system or that method of functioning wasn't really working because most of the maintenance activities that are supposed to be carried out are never being done. So we thought about how can we improve that kind of accountability. We also want to look at determining the socioeconomic embedment of the integrated water energy digitalization nexus, which is our easy water approach, looking at how we can integrate water, energy, and digitalization into one space to resolve the issues of water and sanitation as well as climate change. Our last objective was to determine the state of the aquifers and the water qualities for the demonstration sites with climate change in perspective. Because we know the impact of climate change on our groundwater sources, we know the impact of climate change in terms of the rivers around there, the charge of aquifers and all of that. So we wanted also to find out how can our system be able to look at or capture information that could help maybe researchers or development experts in terms of putting an approach that could really be sustainable in that area. After putting out these objectives in place, we started out looking at solutions, that our solution should be able to be sustainable. It should be something that could last, will benefit other generations. It be something that could be efficient. We bring about the efficient use of water resources. So we took into consideration that our system should be able to manage what water resources that we have, and not in terms of reducing wastage of water, which is some of the things we noticed as well. One of the things was that we wanted our solution to capture was to be able to enhance the community resilience in the sense that can our solution be able to strengthen the community in terms of being able to cope with the impacts of COVID-19, can they be able to cope with the effects of climate change? Can we provide them a solution that will be able to give them that resilience? And as well as look at the guarantee long-term impact for COVID-19. One of the social part of our solution was that we wanted to be youth-led because we know that the youth are the future of tomorrow. So we were also looking at how can we bring a solution that incorporates what the youth are doing today. We know a lot of youths are involved in innovation, a lot of youths are involved in technological advancement, a lot of youths are involved in businesses. And so we wanted also to look at our solution to be able to have that aspect of bringing the youth into the project to understand what we're doing and how they can be part of it as well. And so when we got all of that findings in place, we thought we sorted out that our solution will be providing a quick and just-in-time community water access points that is for already existing boreholes or for new boreholes. We will be providing a sustainable and cost-effective solar pumping system, which will be built on existing solar energy resources. And as well as our solution will be using low-cost technologies such as the Internet of Things to install and enhance monitoring systems. So we built all of the ideas and our findings into those three things to make our solution really sustainable and cost-effective for the population. And so what is different from what we're proposing and what is already existing, which makes it innovative in terms of what we're trying to do? We sorted out that it should help to do the transition from diesel or hand pumps to solar pumping, which is one of the major aspects in terms of mitigation to climate change. We saw that our system should be able to be a real-time monitoring of aquifers and water quality to be able to provide the population sustainable, safe drinking water. It should also be able to do the replacement of cash payments with mobile money payments, because that will reduce the issues of no maintenance taking place, as well as bring about accountability and traceability in terms of resources that the community is contributing towards their infrastructure. We also wanted our system to be able to incorporate the aspect of early warning. We realized in certain communities the changes in climate, the rapid changes in climate, which is constantly affecting the people's lives. And so we thought about our solution being able to have the warning system to say, this is the temperature, this is the climate, this is the weather condition, this is what's going to probably be happening in a couple of hours to help the population to better prepare themselves. In terms of floods, for example, in the littoral region where we constantly have floods when there are heavy rains, such a system will be able to alert people on those changes in weather for them to be better prepared. And next, we thought that it would be an opportunity to digitalize our water as well. We know in many other countries, especially East African countries and in the Western countries, they have been able to put in technology where they can control, they can use their water, they can manage their water. And so we will look at how can we digitalize our water systems where we can have easy access cards or tags, where wherever you're able to see our device or our machine, you can access them. And it is novel in Cameroon and the Central African region. So we think that it's something that it could really benefit the community. This is just a few pictures of what we're trying to do. Our minimum viable product so far, we're able to do water dispensing, and it has an access card where you can use to access the device. The device has a display screen where you actually see the information on how you're interacting with the machine. It can tell you what are the different temperatures of the day. It can tell you what are different weather conditions of the day or the next day. And as well, we have a mobile application on the device created for it, where it can help you to be able to access our device anywhere it's been seen. You can also use the mobile application to be able to see what you have as water credit, to be able to use the device. And of course, there's a cloud management system to capture the data for the users of the system. So that's just some of the things we already put in place for our innovation. We have a goal to try to build the system to be more robust, because we have looked at how can we develop a system that will incorporate everything that we have realized, specifically in that context of Dokayo, and to be able to provide them the kind of comfort in terms of usage, safe drinking water, and in terms of mitigations in terms of climate change. So we started working on a robust system which looks exactly like this. So it's simply going to be still using renewable energy for powering the system. We're thinking about doing recycling of plastic to build those structure where we fit the easy water dispenser in it. So it will be really beneficial in terms of communities that have huge plastic waste. also for communities that have problem water management. So we think that this kind of a structure can be a uniting point also in terms of community for them to come together, because it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be in the middle, in the center of the city. It's going to be beautiful and attractive. So it's not only a point of access for water, but as well as a kind of a cultural kind of thing that, it goes with the culture of the people. Our reward system, we think is achievable if we want to put it in place. Our region has a really high solar energy potential, and so we already have the technology of solar energy used here in our context in Cameroon. We have a lot of the schools training people using solar energy, so we think we have the potential to be able to use such technology. Cameroon generally produces more than 600,000 tons of plastic waste yearly. That is from the Ministry of Environment and Nature Protection. So with that quantity of plastic waste that is being dumped in the environment naturally, most of the times in rivers, I think this is a possibility, or this is the opportunity for it to be recycled and produce structures like that that can hold our easy water. And lastly, 84% of the population, that's 1 billion people in Africa, already getting access to SIM connection by 2025. That is by GSM mobile economy. So, I mean, the technology, or in terms of low cost technology like Internet of Things, is it possible? It is possible in terms of having that kind of access to connectivity, having access to mobile telephone. So I think it's possible for us to develop a robust system like that with this kind of already resources that are available. And what is the impact of this technology or innovation in a community like Dokayo? It's going to improve the access to water, also affordable drinking water, and as well as water use efficiency. The community already has a huge problem of water because of the drying of wells, because of exploitation of the forest, and all other activities like encroachment by animals and humans. So we think that this is a possibility for them to improve access to water for the population. We think it's also an opportunity for socioeconomic activities in a community like that with a lot of youthful population. It's an opportunity for more people to get into Internet of Things, get into business, get into technology, creating a system like Easy Water where we will use digital cards to access them. We think that they're going to have small businesses that will be able to sell our water credits to the users. So there is a possibility for creation of jobs. There is a possibility for creation of businesses, for opportunities for both for the locals in that community. So it is an opportunity also for them to improve the standard of living, bringing this kind of technology in the community. We think it's an opportunity also as well in terms of improving the local capacity for students, and researchers and policymakers. There's that huge gap in terms of students getting opportunities in taking part in research, taking part in projects, which can bring a lot of change in terms of their knowledge in climate change, in terms of water access and sanitation. So this is an opportunity where we think it can improve that kind of a knowledge gap. It can also be able to improve in terms of data collection to understand how our aquifers are functioning in different localities that we're able to install this system. So researchers can be able to use that data to be able to understand better on our groundwater sources. And policymakers can make better laws that will improve the lives of the community. Some of the challenges that we're facing as an organization in terms of building such a robust system is just limited finance. We know we talk about the climate finance every day, but it's still a major thing back in low-income economies like Cameroon, which is one of them. We still need a lot of finance into our economy in terms of building this kind of green infrastructure, in terms of building green infrastructures that can be able to benefit the population and as well as for sustainable reasons. So we have that kind of limitation as well. We believe that we still need some kind of expertise support from other organizations, from academia, from researchers, from policymakers, as well as partnerships that could help us, develop our easy water technology in such a way that we can scale it out to other communities in Africa as well as in our country. So we believe that with strong partnership, with strong engagement from policymakers, from academia, from researchers, both within our country and out of country, we can be able to develop a system like that could benefit the population as well as we mitigate some of the challenges of climate change. I will want to end up my representation with a positive note by saying that we believe that easy water technology will revolutionize our water and energy sector, as well as foster climate change mitigation efforts. That is the note I would like to end up my presentation. And in order to put all that, we have a young team that has been working for this all this while and trying to put all this research, getting information and building what we have there. Thank you so much. And that's my presentation. I'll be waiting for any questions later. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Christian. This was really a very insightful presentation. And let me just summarize this presentation because this is so interesting from the perspective of innovation, climate change, and COVID-19 impacts as well. Your presentation has basically touched upon a number of interlinkages between transformation on climate change issues to make communities more resilient through use of innovation and through use particularly of renewable energy to address the mitigation gaps that we see in cities and particularly in the very vulnerable communities. And your solutions are innovative in terms of the dispenser using plastic, recycled plastic. As you mentioned, Cameroon does have a very high proportion of waste. And if that can be recycled in a more sustainable way, it also addresses the question of, as you said, sustainable consumption and production, and at the same time getting to gray and green infrastructure for making water more accessible. And I think that's very important. Like you mentioned, 90% of the pumps are not working in Cameroon. And so how do you address the needs of the community in a way that there is also accountability in terms of verifying the monitoring system, in terms of maintaining this new system that you have put in place, and in providing incentives to the community through the credit system that you mentioned as well, by replacing it with mobile money. And of course, also giving the communities an opportunity to engage with each other and also help with the early warning system. This is excellent. I would just ask if there are any questions at this point in time. We can always stop for questions. I have a couple of questions from my side. So any questions that the audience have? So there is a question from Margot from UN Habitat, and she asks you, Christian, great to see you integrate the voices of the future, the youth. Could you elaborate on how you engaged them? And if you have seen that the strategy you used has also catalyzed a change of perception in the older generations as well. Over to you, Christian.
Oh, thank you for that question. I think it's a very beautiful question. When we started working with the communities, we realized that most of the times the older people in the community, they always want to suppress the youth in terms of taking the overall control, because they think that new infrastructures or innovation in the community, they have to always be the ones to manage them. They're looking at the side of getting the funds, or they want to manage the money. But we try to change that narrative by saying that we want the youth to be part of it. And by doing so, we incorporated the aspects of the youth collecting plastic containers as one of the things that they could do and get incentives from us. So we wanted to engage them through an activity that they will get incentives and to encourage them to be part of our process. And so we connected the youths that were collecting plastic containers for us to the companies that were producing bricks that we want to do the reverse system with. And in that way, it was bringing that unity. And so that was one of the ways that we were engaging the youth, and they were really excited to be part of that process. Like I said, building the structure from plastic container was more of a kind of a cultural thing, because it was now exciting and outstanding to be in a community where you find that kind of a structure where people want to go there. Sometimes they take pictures. They want to be beside it. It's interesting for them. That's something they're not used to. They're not used to seeing that. They've been used to the old systems where they use the hand pumps, they're struggling with the hand pumps, but now it's easy to a system where it could be as fun for you. You could take pictures behind it. So many youths, especially young ladies, were interested to have that kind of infrastructure within the community. I think the second question was on how do the older generation, I didn't get it well, older generations in general.
So the second part of the question was, has this also helped to change the perception or the behavior of the older generation, the innovative hand pump that you have and the credit access system as well?
Yes, it has not been an easy process just to say that for them to accept such technology, but I think they were very excited about that because with COVID-19 by the corner, they were the most vulnerable people, in terms of getting infected by or affected by COVID-19. And so they saw this as an opportunity for them to stay safe, stay longer. So it was that perspective that was encouraging for them to see if we had this thing that we can get control, we can get access to tabs. We don't need to touch the tabs in our hands like the old system when everybody touches the pump. They in that health direction, it was very easy for them to understand why we have to use such a technology in the community. So that made it really interesting. And as well as it was fun for them to see that they could manage water using a mobile phone, because the old system of people collecting cash, that wasn't working. But they could see that you could use what quantity that you want to use and not necessarily have to fetch a quantity of water that you don't need, And so it was interesting as well for them to see they could control and use their water as they wanted. It is not easy, it was not easy for them to really understand that. But I think with the COVID-19, like I said, it was really a point of interest for them to say we need to embrace this new technology.
Thank you, Christian. So can I follow up on two things that you have highlighted? One is the impact of COVID-19 on thinking about this idea. Of course, it was also just because of the lack of sustainable water systems in a very vulnerable community. But as you stated, that COVID-19 only further helped you to visualize this idea and to go ahead with this. Can you speak a little bit on the health impact and the COVID-19 pandemic generally on the community before these pumps were installed, and seeing whether there is more access now through use of this technology, through use of this cloud management system? So that's the first part. And the second part is the community that you are working with, like you stated, is one of the most vulnerable communities, both with regard to the impact of climate change, the depletion of water table, the groundwater table, and also just the poverty aspect in the community. So can you just speak a little bit more about, also given this is a very innovative technology and you mentioned the youth already, how promising is this? Because you've mentioned constraints regarding financing, mentorship, and expertise to scale this technology. And so given these limitations, how do you see, how do you think that, the audience comes from, the local governments, the national governments, from the private sector, from academia? How can the different urban stakeholders, go ahead with your innovation? What would you need for the vulnerable communities to be able to access this technology better as well?
Thank you. In terms of the health impact, I think Cameroon was one of the countries that was really, really hit by COVID-19. At that time, there was still a lot of stigma, which was caused because of maybe misinformation, the social media, a lot of issues on the vaccines, people being afraid of, we don't know what this vaccine all about. We don't know what this virus is about. We don't even believe it. We're thinking it's even worse in communities like that don't really have much access to information or limited access, and a few people have to give them information. So I think most of those communities are living on natural herbs. They have been living on natural herbs. When they're sick, they just have to cut some natural grass and stuff. And so when we're saying that we want them to start taking certain vaccines or some other things to prevent from COVID-19, it was really a whole issue, But just take it to the simple aspect of saying that if you're able to wash your hands regularly, then you can be safe. That is some of the things that we were capitalizing on, just to say you can save yourself. If you don't want to believe all of this story, you don't want to be part of all of this thing, can you just wash your hands regularly? Can you? And so we looked at Dukayo because of that specific problem of lack of access of enough water. So bringing this opportunity to put a technology like that was to say, how can we improve that access to water? Because we were really propagating a lot of noise about washing of hands as the easiest way to prevent yourself from contamination. I also want to say that in terms of the community and the limited resources, yes, it's a poor community. They've been living basically on farming as one of the major activities, but they have been surviving. They have been living and be able to adapt to their communities, to what they have in place, and still be living very well. So what I was looking at, how can we go along, change the narrative, but not changing their culture, but still living in them, bringing in the technology into the system. So that's how we thought about how can we use plastics to develop a structure that could be attractive to them. It's not been easy in terms of resources, because the local government is one of our first major partners that have to give us support in terms of where can you do this? Can you be able to run this project here? Who owns the project? Who is able to manage this? So we've been able to have a lot of collaboration with the local government in the Eastern region to be able to accept that kind of technology. So they have been participative in terms of helping us, but in terms of the government itself as a whole, it's been difficult, because one of the things that we have realized over the years is that for innovation to really take its control here, it's always shown from somewhere else, and then the government starts getting interest. So many youths here in Cameroon have developed other technologies, but they were being highlighted out of the country, like what I'm doing here. And somebody says, oh, I know easy water technology is something that's working nicely. Then they start pulling interest and say, okay, can we talk to you? Can we see what you're doing? So that's been the issue and the difficulties. For an organization like us, we've had the opportunity to be part of Venture Lab, to have MIT Innovation Water Award to talk about this same technology. But one of the things that we got from them was like, we need first support from your local government. We need some support from your government. We need some support from business people in your country to be able to show that you can do this. So we've not been able to have that full support, because they don't really see that passion, that determination in putting that kind of technology, if it's not benefiting them, has directly first. So we're trying to prove the concept, to say this is what we can do, this is what can work in this community, and we think that you can be able to scale it if you want to scale it. So in terms of those the resources, it's been difficult to pull off that, and that's why we're looking for opportunities like this to talk about what we're doing, to see other organizations that are doing similar things. I know in East Africa, there is an organization known as eWater that's done something similar. I know in the UK, because I was in the UK, I saw what they were doing on smart water, using smart water meters. And so I know that there are other models out there, there's the technologies out there, and I know that they can still give us that support in terms of mentorship, in terms of saying, no, this direction, in terms of the technology, might not be feasible in this locality. So in terms of that kind of support. That's what we're looking at. We have that kind of advanced mentorship or there's a guidance to see if what we really technically is going to be lasting or not. I don't know if I've really answered all your questions.
No, thank you, Christian. This is very, very good. I would at this point just pause to maybe make a transition to the next presentation from Isabel, and then we will come back and have further discussion. But this is very interesting, and thank you, Christian. We follow up. So if I could please ask Evie to start showing the presentation from Isabel. Thank you so much. Sorry, this is on mute. Evie, could you unmute the presentation and start again?
And welcome to this virtual tour of the Connecting Nature Enterprise Platform, a global database of nature-based enterprises connecting buyers and suppliers of nature-based solutions. What's the need for a platform like this? You are probably well aware that the demand for nature-based solutions has increased exponentially, and that the concept of NBS has been mainstreamed by policymakers from the UN to the EC. We know too, from research carried out, that the problem owners like cities seeking to implement and scale up nature-based solutions face a real challenge in terms of identifying and finding enough skilled suppliers of NBS. The Connecting Nature Enterprise Platform responds to this challenge with a new online marketplace launched just 1 year ago that connects potential buyers with over 1,000 suppliers of nature-based solutions globally, who can help to design, deliver, manage, and monitor NBS. Users to the platform can search for nature-based enterprises by country, city, or sector. Our online platform is structured around 10 communities of practice. Each community is led by an industry ambassador, a recognized leader in the planning and delivery of nature-based solutions. In diverse areas, from NBS for green buildings, to health and well-being, tourism and recreation, forestry, agriculture, smart tech, and so on. Our community ambassadors organize regular events and webinars, bringing together experts and members of the communities to raise awareness of new knowledge, best practice, and industry standards. Since our launch 12 months ago, our ambassadors have delivered workshops to over 2,500 participants across a wide range of topics. Signing up is simple and easy. Membership is free and open to anyone involved or with an interest in nature-based solutions. New visitors to the platform can sign up directly to events, and once you've signed up, if you're a nature-based enterprise, I'll show you now, you can sign up and display, showcase your products and services. just like here. And you can feature your products and services in many different languages depending on the market that you're targeting. The more information provided by a nature-based enterprise on our platform, the higher up the search ranking they will be. So buyers of nature-based solutions like cities will be able to find them as easily as possible. A couple of more features of our platform before we finish today are our opportunities and our challenges. Opportunities can be used to disseminate across a global audience. You can post your opportunity in English or in any other language, and you can share your opportunity across the platform or limit it to a specific sector of activity. Opportunities range from funding opportunities through to entrepreneurship and accelerator type activity, funding calls, competitions, job and research opportunities, and so on. Our responses to opportunities are private and they go straight to the user of the opportunity. However, our challenges are slightly different. If you're looking for inspiration or support, you can post an open challenge here. You might be looking for fresh ideas about nature-based solutions, a bit of technical advice, or you might be looking for a simple response to a technical question, as here, around governance models for community gardens. But challenges are open to everyone and responses are public, so we get a conversation going. So we encourage you to jump in, respond to challenges already on the platform, or post something new. You can find out more about the platform, the team and our ambassadors, and how to contact us in our About section. We're constantly adding to the usability and functionality of the platform, and we look forward to welcoming you and seeing you sign up shortly as a new user. Thanks for stopping by, and don't forget to sign up on naturebasedenterprise.eu.
Thank you so much. So Isabel is now with us, and I just wanted to also quickly give you an introduction for Isabel. So Isabel is the acting CEO of Horizon Noah Innovation, which is a not-for-profit foundation specializing in social innovation, research, capacity building, and communications. And the mission of Horizon Noah is to accelerate the transition towards a sustainable EU economy as set out in the Green Deal by empowering social and nature-based enterprises. Isabel, our presenter, has over 20 years of experience working with organizations in the commercial, NGO, EU community, and voluntary sectors across the EU. And she has provided business development support to many SMEs, startups, and social enterprises. Since 2017, Isabel has delivered sustainable nature-based solutions, business modeling, and entrepreneurial workshops in each of the fast follower cities that do implement nature-based solutions. Isabel, thank you so much. This was really a very good presentation on a platform which is so important in terms of making the connections and also helping virtually provide some capacity building support to, remote enterprises and to entrepreneurs, who might not have the opportunity otherwise to get quick expertise and information. And being at the cutting edge of innovation by having such a platform. You mentioned in your presentation that you've already trained 2,500 participants through this platform, and it's just 1 year old. Could you just share a little bit more of your experience on the kind of enterprises that have connected through this virtual platform and the areas, we are talking about the gray and the green-blue infrastructure issues, but the other cross-cutting issues in climate change that the entrepreneurs and these enterprises have brought on the platform. So basically, what is the demand from your platform and how are you providing or addressing their needs? Over to you, Isabel.
Thank you, Jazip, and thank you for having me at the Innovate4Cities conference and for allowing us to showcase the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. It has been a very interesting evolution, the platform really, and it stemmed from the Connecting Nature Horizon 2020 project, which is all about the implementation of large-scale nature-based solutions in cities. And I think part of what we found in our project and what we're hearing from other projects is that, you know, cities and municipalities and private developers, they're all very keen and they all want to, you know, implement large-scale nature-based solutions, but finding the suppliers, finding the people that can actually implement on the ground, that can help them plan, that can help them manage into the long term was a real struggle. And that was where there was a bottleneck. And one of the focuses of the Connecting Nature project is all about stimulating that what we're calling the nature-based economy, how nature-based solutions can act as a catalyst both to sustain existing enterprises, but to build and create new enterprises. So to cut a long story short, really, it evolved as this kind of matchmaking platform for buyers and suppliers of nature-based solutions, but it has actually probably transitioned into something much more valuable, I think, for nature-based enterprises, in that it has given them a platform. I suppose it has allowed them to increase their visibility and the whole visibility of what we call the nature-based economy. To a global level. And how we've done that is by creating what we call these communities of practice, and we have 10 of them on the platform. And they're aligned, I suppose, like we didn't just pick them. They've evolved out of the research done as part of the Connecting Nature project into the nature-based economy, and what actually constitutes a nature-based enterprise. Our research that has been carried out by both Trinity College and UCD, University College Dublin, has categorised, I suppose, nature-based enterprises into several different sectors, who create both direct services and those who create more indirect. And by indirect services, I mean things like consultancy, community engagement, that you mightn't think about as a nature-based enterprise, but we're hearing all the time how stakeholder engagement is so important in the co-creation process. So a lot of sort of indirect help, I mean, it could be consultancies, and by that I mean people supplying landscape architecture advisory services, I suppose, ecosystem service restoration, and so on. And then you have the practical, the people that are actually implementing the solutions, like the green buildings, like the forest therapies, I suppose, for health and well-being, like the sustainable agriculture, the water solutions. So what we've done really is really to give the communities of practice their own voice by managing these communities themselves, by asking the enterprises to step up and manage their own communities. And they have all adopted or elected, chosen what we call an ambassador, who's a practitioner in that area of expertise, who is the voice of that community on our platform. And through the ambassador and through the community membership, they decide what direction they want to drive their community in terms of developing best practice, in terms of running their webinars. What are the issues that they're really facing? And it's interesting to see there's a lot of cross-cutting issues. For example, we've had quite a number of seminars and workshops around the whole area of public procurement, and that's a real bottleneck for the small enterprise, who oftentimes can't compete with those larger enterprises who deliver, I suppose, maybe horticultural landscaping services, but may not have that sort of nature-based angle to what they do. They might think about the biodiversity elements, they might think about sort of the environmental impact so much that a smaller nature-based organisation or nature-based enterprise would. So it's interesting to identify those cross-cutting elements, and it's also really interesting to hear. We also have a community for nature-based organisations. So these are organisations that kind of who would very much support the ethos of nature-based solutions and would very much, you know, get in and want to fund them and support them and so on. So we have in our nature-based organisation communities, members like local authorities, municipalities, research organisations, and people who who want to procure the services. So they're saying, on the one hand, we're very constrained by public procurement, and we know this is something that has to change. We're hearing, on the other hand, from the practitioners that we can't tender for these contracts because of the size of the scale or whatever. So it's helping us, helping the researchers in Connecting Nature, helping the policymakers, I suppose, change the policy direction, change the policy focus. These are the crucial issues that need to be addressed, identified by both the suppliers and the buyers of nature-based solutions. And we're feeding that into our white paper on the nature-based economy, feeding that into the EC, feeding it into IUCN, feeding it into the UN, where to try to really move it up the policy agenda. And I suppose the thing is, we're hearing about how investment in nature-based solutions needs to triple by 2030. And how do we do that if we don't remove the barriers, both from a public procurement or public funding perspective? How do we encourage private investment? And then how do we skill up and enable our enterprises? So in short, I suppose, in 12 short months, the impact has been quite, I suppose, we're delighted with it and we're surprised by it. When you would have said to us 12 months ago, you'd have put 2,500 people through capacity building seminars and workshops, we wouldn't have thought that. So the demand is there, the hunger is there, both from a supplier perspective and a demand side perspective.
Wow, Isabel, this is really so helpful for the audience, and also, the objective of the conference, which is, thinking about the particular policy and science gaps that exist when we are thinking about climate change solutions, and we are talking about nature-based solutions. And your platform has shown, right, that technology works, and maybe you can speak a little bit on why you think that, particularly in the last 1 year, given the COVID-19 situation, that the nature-based platform had so much of uptake. Of course, it is excellent, but just speaking a little bit about the COVID-19 interface, where the whole world went global, and how it could remotely also connect with entrepreneurs, like Christian also in Cameroon, for example. So that's one part. And I think the second part, and this is really important, is what you have identified through your platform. One is that if you give ownership to the community, that is demanding the nature-based solution, then there is more, there is a behavior change that you see, because then everyone wants the solution to really, have success. And the only way of having success is by then looking at the structural barriers and addressing them. And so then as you mentioned, the interlinkages then become very clear in the entire system. So then it also goes to the transformation aspect. We cannot, and I think this is what your platform is doing, that it is looking at, there are these excellent nature-based solutions, but they cannot be put in silos unless or until, for example, when we don't mobilize finance, for example, or we don't address the public procurement issues, for example, or we don't see how it's connected to other climate change issues in the chain. So this is very, very good, and I think this would really help. You also briefly mentioned that you do have different stakeholders, including the local governments, the academia, and you're also feeding this into the gaps on the policy side. Can you also give a little bit more of your experience on that? Because this conference is about cities. It is about, helping cities, particularly the cities of the South, with experiences that come on, addressing the climate change through innovation and making them more resilient. So what, and Christian had before mentioned how the local authorities are partnering, and then if the solution needs to be scaled at a more national level, then stronger partnerships are needed, and more mentoring is needed as well. And of course, expertise and financing is needed. So maybe if you could just start a little bit on the COVID-19 impact you think that has happened on this, and secondly, on just your experience working with different stakeholders to address this big gap through the platform.
Yeah, good questions. Well, I suppose COVID-19 changed how we do everything. I mean, overnight we moved virtually, and I mean just today, I was at my first meeting in 2.5 years, or 2 years, or whatever it was. Meeting people in the flesh, no longer at my home office, and it was such, oh my goodness, it was so lovely to meet people in the flesh again. But but for 18 months we've all been looking at everybody from the shoulders up. But do you know what? Moving virtually and having to do business online and having to do business through Zoom has actually opened so many new opportunities and pathways that all of a sudden we're reaching that global audience that we wouldn't have met in face-to-face scenarios before. And I mean, the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform has been very fortunate, I suppose, to arrive just at the cusp of COVID and moving online and moving virtually. And also, I suppose, to be thrown in at the deep end in terms of answering to that global audience, or meeting that global demand. And we were very fortunate, I suppose, in some ways last summer as well, that we were very heavily involved in our Connecting Nature Enterprise Summit, which we hosted virtually. We should have been in Poznan in Poland, but we hosted it virtually to an audience of over 800 people, and really hungry for knowledge about entrepreneurship and the nature-based economy and nature-based enterprises, and how they can connect and so on. So yeah, so COVID, as I say, changed how we do business. But I suppose there is a lot to be said for the face-to-face and creating those relationships. But it has, I suppose, given our enterprises, or many of our enterprises, not all of our enterprises, an opportunity, I suppose, to look at global markets beyond what they would have considered pre-COVID. So all of a sudden thinking, okay, well, I can deliver my solution in the global south, or I can look to expand what I'm doing, and I can build relationships, and I can maybe look at the different business models that I can look at licensing or franchising. So all of a sudden there's all these little sparks starting to fly with some of our more established nature-based enterprises, and then some of our, I suppose, other nascent more seedling enterprises, those that are more in the startup phase, or the small number of employees or whatever. They're learning from watching what the others are doing. They're learning, that getting their own business model right, getting their marketing right, getting their profile right is so important, just even to make those other national, local connections. You asked me about the other stakeholders. And this is something we're really interested in, because again, we hear so much about community engagement and engaging the stakeholders on the ground. And if you don't bring the community along when you're implementing nature-based solutions, you've lost, I suppose, a very important audience. But there are many other different, I suppose, stakeholders and beneficiaries and partners that can partner with cities in planning the design and implementing and managing, and what we've been doing in Connecting Nature over the last, I suppose, 4.5 years now, is that we've developed a framework process for cities, and core in that is around the stakeholder engagement and co-production. And I'll put in the chat later on in a few minutes the links to the website that'll give you those tools. But we've essentially developed a toolkit to help cities plan their nature-based solution using 7 different building blocks, from co-production to technological solutions to measuring impact, entrepreneurship, and financing and business models. And part of that, what we've done, and I can talk specifically around finance business models because that's what I've been doing in cities. It's talking to them about, we've created what we call a business model canvas for nature-based solutions, and it's very much a visual representation of the business story for your nature-based solution. So what's the value proposition? Why are you implementing this nature-based solution? What's the social value? What's the economic value? What's the environmental value? So we're not looking at it just through that one economic lens. We're doing that economic or the environmental and the social value that is so important to a nature-based solution. That's crucial. And we look then at the activities and the resources that a municipality might need to implement that nature-based solution. And who's going to help you then deliver those activities and those resources? So who are the stakeholders? Who are the partners? And very often partners can also be beneficiaries. So we look at everything through that economic lens, that environmental lens, that social lens. And you'd be amazed at the different stakeholders that people identify through, like, obviously the community groups, but, different arms of local government, the education, the health, the departments of health, the local hospitals, and then business. And business is a sector, I think, where people haven't always thought about sort of developing relations when it comes to nature-based solutions. And we're discovering more and more, I could talk about this for hours now, but I'll try and keep it short, but we're discovering more and more that cities need to find, innovative solutions to fund. And that very often you will find local businesses, the corporate sector, have, through their corporate social responsibility agendas, they're keen to get involved, but they don't know how, or they're not sure in what they can offer. And we have examples now through some of our cities. Poznan is one example where we are, and Nicosia in Cyprus is another example, where we are developing these public-private partnerships to put in place small-scale nature-based solutions like little pocket parks, which will be of benefit to the employees of an organisation, but they're also open to the inhabitants, the citizens of the city. And in so doing, and by engaging with these stakeholders, we're stimulating local enterprise as well, because PwC aren't going to manage the pocket park, but they're going to provide the funding for a local landscaping company to do that, or a community group to manage it on their behalf into the future and develop those kind of relationships. So stakeholder involvement, looking at it from beyond the community lens, is really, I think, important when it comes to developing the business models and the innovative financing tools that municipalities need to think about, because there is this over-reliance on these traditional models of funding, and we all know that has to change if we're going to invest, if investment is going to scale up by 2030. So it's a very interesting space. It's a very interesting space.
Yes, it is. And Isabel, this is because we speak so much about engaging the non-government stakeholders, and particularly the private sector, and the COP26 presidency and the negotiations that are going to happen in Glasgow. How do we mobilize the billion on adaptation issues, for example, for finance? And I think you have really framed this issue in a way which asks us, working independently in our own silos, that, well, maybe, the stakeholders need to come together and be able to do both a give and a take. So it's just not about, propagating a particular solution. It's also about showing them, the change that is going to happen, both as a beneficiary and also, for the larger community as well. And I think for that, like you mentioned, these partnerships are always very complex, and a lot of I think I would say that nature-based solutions most of the times, and I think this also goes to the next question we have. What is the resistance to these nature-based solutions? Are there resistance to the nature-based solution? And what kind of a resistance, can be expected to the nature-based solutions? Are these the old industries? And so I'll allow you to answer that question in a second, but I think it does really go to the larger question we are trying to address over here, which is that we might have a lot of these solutions in the market, but if we are not able to actually bring, stakeholders which do not always toe our line and which do not speak with the same voice, then we are not going to really get to the goal of, mobilizing finance, because the traditional models are not going to work for mobilizing finance. And for uptake of nature-based solutions, there needs to be community ownership, like Christian was also mentioning in his presentation. And for that, we need to show what is innovative and also how it helps to both address the needs of the community and also be able to then scale those ideas. So over to you on, with regard to what is the resistance to these nature-based solutions?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I mean, I think at a fundamental level, there is still a lack of awareness of what a nature-based solution actually is among many different stakeholders, and I think also the fact that the term nature-based solution doesn't easily translate into different languages is also another barrier. But, moving away from just the terminology and the general lack of awareness, which I think we all know about. I mean, it's well recognized. I think also there's a lack of evidence around the impact of nature-based solutions in terms of even economic savings. And what is the benefit for me as an investor if I invest in nature-based solutions? Because very often it's not, I'm not going to reap a dividend out of it, or I'm not going to see the share value go up, so it's very difficult. I think there's a lot of work still has to be done on capturing, I suppose, the impact in terms of the savings in health and well-being to convince health insurance companies to invest in nature-based solutions, as an example. So there's still there's a top-level recognition that this is a good thing to do. But people still, the evidence base, I think, is still lacking to convince people to invest in nature-based solutions, to convince new investors to invest in nature-based solutions, for example, like health insurance companies. But I think that will change. I think it's coming. But it's just, I suppose, it's getting that information and getting that evidence out there and showing that, this is why, it will lead to X and save in, cutting the health budget, or in cancers or asthma or whatever it is. So that's, that's I think one of the, I suppose, resistances in terms of innovative financing and funding. Old industries. To some extent, I suppose, really also some of that has to do with a lack of awareness about what nature-based solutions are and what is a nature-based enterprise. And, so we would, I suppose, define nature-based enterprises as enterprises that use nature as a core element of their products and services for delivery. Okay, and by core element, I mean, we do mean, a good sort of 50% of what they do. But also, I suppose that, biodiversity is so increasingly important in, in I suppose, the concept of nature-based solutions. And unless, a nature-based solution contributes significantly to biodiversity, it's not a nature-based solution. So again, it's about, convincing, I suppose, maybe older, more established industries to look at how they can change their business practice, to adapt, to incorporate more nature, to think about biodiversity. It mightn't always be the most cost-effective solution, but then again, people are no longer, or not that they're no longer, but they're looking at other things other than cost and economies of scale. Sometimes that the euro sign or the dollar sign is not the bottom line here, and that they're beginning to think, okay, well, we're looking at climate mitigation. We're looking at we have to reduce, our carbon emissions. So we need to change how we implement things on the ground, and that needs to filter through to more older established industries who could change if again they could be convinced that there's merit in doing so.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Yes, I agree that there are lots of behavior barriers, to including the private sector and mobilizing the more innovative forms of financing, and that these attitudes can only change by demonstrating the impact that these nature-based solutions has, and that can only be done by showing that there is a wider uptake to these solutions and that they can be easily scaled to other cities and to other communities as well. And as you say, it's still not a straightforward formula. We also need to convince policymakers and cities, that it is important to sort of showcase the value for the communities themselves to take ownership of these nature-based solutions as well. And I agree, I think there is a momentum now, at least in cities, through your examples, to show that different stakeholders, including the private sector, are slowly adapting, to understanding the climate change crisis and looking at these different innovative models.
Okay.
I will lastly ask Christian to come into the conversation again, because I think this is a very, important opportunity, given, Isabel, that you are the provider of a very innovative platform to address the climate change crisis through, being a matchmaker on nature-based solutions. And you also understand the private sector and you work so closely with the private sector. And on the other side, Christian is the entrepreneur, and he is working in a vulnerable community in Cameroon, where he has developed this innovative business model to provide water access and also address the sanitation COVID-19 challenge through, credit card financing using the new renewable form of pumping for water. So Christian, the question is to you. Given what you've heard from Isabel, and you were mentioning before how you have come across in your own project, there are barriers to financing your solution, and that it's not always easy to convince other stakeholders, to buy into your solution. Do you see any hope here? Do you see that, this, because you also mentioned to me how you were inspired by certain enterprises in water technology in the UK and in East Africa. So given this knowledge that you have from Isabel, just sort of, just share your, insights into the financing aspect and what more can, platforms like Isabel's platform do to help entrepreneurs such as you. Over to you, Christian.
Well, thank you, Jazzy. It's a wonderful presentation, and I really enjoyed everything you've been talking about. Have a lot to learn from you. I really think what she's doing in our organization is really big. Nature-based solutions today are one of the most practical and best ways of approaching these challenges in terms of the environment, because we're using the environment as well. We're using the what we have, to best, use and adapt in different contexts, in terms of reaching our goals, which makes it a lot easier in terms of sometimes bringing huge technologies, very huge technologies, which are difficult to deploy or sometimes difficult to implement or even maintain. And when we were looking at our own solution, that's one of the things we didn't want to get into, really, really large scale kind of technology. And we started off by looking at the Internet of Things. If we want to use it in this system, will it work first? If it's not practical, then we don't input into the project, because that will be just, looking for finances to build things that won't last. In my context in Cameroon, when I see when I look at the issues of hand pumps, for example, which I say 90% is always bad after 1 year, it's because the government has a partnership with the Indian government, an Indian company that provides those hand pumps. So you can imagine when those pumps get bad, we only have to get them from India. So you can't get them from elsewhere. So it's really a problem in terms of getting those pumps fixed on time, and sometimes being abandoned because they never get fixed. So those kinds of policies sometimes, in terms of reaching out to helping the population is difficult. So in terms of financing, I mean, an organization like what Isabel is doing, we need more of that in terms of the global south, where most of these issues are really affecting the people. We need more of that in terms of going deep into the community to be able to help them understand the context of why we're doing this and how we have to take this approach. Because when we started looking at our project, we didn't want to focus right at the level of the city because it's a little bit complex. When it comes to the level of the city with a high level governance, you have to talk to the governor, you need clearance from the governor before you get through all those bottlenecks. Some of the things that you were trying to resolve, we know we can solve them all in 1 day or in 1 month, but you realize that by the time you're doing all that bottleneck, all that bureaucracy and all of that, the problems keep replicating, it's really increasing, multiplying. And so we wanted to take a community that we could really show that at this level, we could bring a small solution. So I think nature-based solutions like what Isabel is doing is really, really good deep at community levels where we can really show it practically without too much interference of the government or the whole structure of the country, putting too much eye on it and saying, see, why are we doing this? How much are we getting from this? Who is financing this? Who is going to own this? And who's going to get this that comes out of it, So I really, really in 100% d'accord with you that is an approach which is really, really feasible in many contexts here in Africa. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I'd love to. I mean, we must connect after this anyway, Christian. But I'm dying to learn more about your water-based solution. I'm sorry I was late onto the call, but it is. I mean, it is this bottom-up approach, isn't it? It really is. I mean, it's ground up, and by coming from the ground up, small steps, little acorns, we grow great trees, and that. It's I think what you're doing, and I will say I think your approach is spot on, because we can't always rely, and we see this with some cities and things that if they're caught up in an electoral cycle or whatever, mayors change and politicians change and priorities change, and so unless communities can self-mobilize and are empowered to self-mobilize, very little in some countries will happen, and in some states will happen, and some cities will happen. So I think I think that approach that you're adopting is absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Isabel, have you had the opportunity to work in some countries in the Central African region?
No, and we'd love to. We would love to. Not yet. No, we have tendered to do it, but unsuccessfully. But we would love to. We would love to expand our region. But the thing about it is, the nature-based solution, the business model canvas that I referred to earlier, I put it into the chat. That's an online tool, and we can do this online with communities in the global south. No problem. So something that can be done, online without quite easily, and we can train the trainees. So we can train you to go and do this with your community. So so it makes it very. So you own it. We'll train you up. We'll give you the skills, and then you go and you deliver for your communities.
Now we will be happy. I'll be happy to speak to you about this later on. I mean, we can share emails here. It's something that is really important for us. I mean, because sometimes it's not one single approach that really works. You have to bring some kind of a multidisciplinary, multi approach. And you see how you can be able to to resolve some of these issues, you know. So I'll be very happy, you know, to mobilize some of the guys in my team, and we have training from you and able to go down to the community and implement them as well.
Great. No, well, let's talk offline about that, but I think we'd love to work with you on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we are very happy also at the conference to hear these conversations, because this is precisely the objective, right, of connecting an entrepreneur like Christian, you know, with Isabella, who's got so much of expertise and the network, you know, and the platform to provide the solutions you're looking at. And from the global north to the global, you know, south, Christian. And I think that is also, you know, the beauty of having innovation in addressing the crisis through this virtual platform. So yes, please do connect. And lastly, I just wanted to state that, you know, I mean, I know we are running out of time, but a couple of very quick observations over here. And I think I totally agree, Isabel, when you said that, you know, the electoral cycle is such that we can never leave it up, you know, to decision makers to, you know, continue or to sustain innovative solutions. And that, you know, as Christian mentioned, it is a complex structure. So then, you know, it becomes our duty, you know, as stakeholders working in the NGO sector, as entrepreneurs, the youth, you know, to be able to showcase the innovation locally, to get the buy-in from the communities, Isabel, as you mentioned, and Christian, as you were stating, and then to take help from other stakeholders, you know, including the private sector, to really scale these solutions. And I think this is very, very important, because, you know, earlier today in the plenary session, Deborah, also from the IPCC, was mentioning that there might be hundreds of solutions out there, but if we are not really able to implement them on the ground, if we are not really able to, you know, see the regionalization of these solutions, then they just remain solutions, but not something, you know, which are workable solutions. And I think hopefully, you know, the discussion we are having today, and, you know, Christian, your idea is also, you know, very new, but it comes at a time when, you know, the COVID-19 crisis hit us, it hit the community, and that's how you thought about, you know, how do you address the wash issue, you know, through having more sustainable water pumps. And then you stated that, you know, you also recognize that Cameroon has so much of solar energy potential, you know, that can be used for the water pumps as technology. And that, you know, it is the youth, and we are going to have, you know, over 1 billion people from Africa who are going to be using technology and going to be connected by mobile phones by 2025. So I think these are all very promising trends, you know, to be really able to have a more systematic transformation, you know, in the climate change sector. And so this is really very exciting. And I have seen, Isabel, that you have also shared with us the business model canvas on nature-based solutions. And thank you so much. And I would invite the audience to take a note of this. And Christian and Isabel, also feel free to drop your emails over here if the audience do want to get in touch with you as well. And I hand it over to Isabel first, and then to Christian for their closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasdeep, and thank you to everybody for your attention this evening. I suppose closing remarks. Really, I suppose, you know, I think you've captured so beautifully, Jasdeep, about, you know, the innovations and showcasing the innovations are so essential if we're going to, I suppose, mobilize and scale up and scale out solutions at a global level, but from global to local and community. You know, it's multi-layered and multifaceted, and I think really, I mean, I would encourage entrepreneurs, I would encourage communities, just to jump in. Don't be afraid of the scale of the problem. You know, because this is it. It's by starting small that, you know, we will you know, identify solutions and remedies. And, you know, come and look on the platform, join our communities. You know, take advantage of, I suppose, the expertise and the knowledge that's out there and the mentoring that is available through platforms like the Enterprise platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. And please also do feel free to, drop in the NBS platform on the chat box.
I'll put it in there before we finish.
Yes, thank you. And Christian, over to you. And also, Christian, you can also drop any of your, if you have anything on the website on your technology as well in the chat box. Over to you. Thanks, Christian. Isabel.
I think Isabel said really all, and I just want to thank you, Jasdeep, for moderating these sessions, putting all this information out there, helping us get it done. Really wonderful job. Need to get a big applause for you for doing this as well. And just to say that there is hope, and we can get there. We have to be resilient. We will not be able to solve all the problems in one day, but we know just little efforts from everybody can make a big difference. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you again to Christian. You are the change maker from your community, and you are mobilizing youth in your city and in your country. And as you said, youth really do hold the key to a more sustainable and climate resilient future for cities. And yes, let's start with small, but think big and get in innovation. So with that, I'm going to close this session. And again, thank you to both our presenters, Isabel and Christian. You've been fantastic, and continue with this work. Look forward to staying in touch. And thank you to the audience. Thank you to Evie, and thank you also to our interpreters. So have a good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are based. And thank you so much again, and look forward to having all of you in our other sessions and staying connected. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.